Who will come out on top, Pokemon or Yokai Watch? Pokemon Let's Go is right around the corner. Its very existence is divisive to say the least. Conversely, Yokai Watch 4 looks to be the game that a lot of Pokemon fans wanted Pokemon on Switch to end up looking like. So the question I want to discuss today is, will the hardcore Pokemon fans that feel slighted by Pokemon Let's Go jump ship and join the Yokai Watch fan base? This is a war I feel is never ending. One franchise has been the reigning champion for some time now. Many franchises have come and gone in their attempts to face it, or if we're being generous, faded into obscurity. Forebearers were extinguished way before they even got a chance to get a spark, but this opponent, well, it has done a respectable job at punching up in some parts of the world, particularly in Japan, but for us here in America, it hasn't exactly proven itself to be a worthy contender just yet. Of course, this war I'm talking about is the one between Pokemon and Yokai Watch, and yes, Pokemon has a pretty sizable lead when you look at the full picture. However, I don't think all is said and done this time around. I think Yokai Watch has a bit of an ace up its sleeve. At worst, it'll level the playing field a bit, but at best, it could gain a slight advantage. I think there's a chance that Pokemon could take a bit of a dip in popularity leading into 2019, but it's not because of Yokai Watch 4 in isolation. Like I already mentioned, the Pokemon fanbase is pretty divided on the current state of Pokemon. After all, we've waited literal decades for a full-fledged Pokemon game that could take advantage of the increased power of home consoles. Admittedly, every time they come close, there's compromises. Like for Pokemon Let's Go, there's no wild battles. I personally am indifferent towards this change, given the fact that I spend most of my time in Pokemon games avoiding wild encounters because they outgrow their usefulness very early and they're annoying. The original console Pokemon RPGs lacked true wild battles as well, but in this case, they were a contributing factor to my relative dislike of these games. The wild encounters as a whole don't exist in the GameCube Pokemon RPGs, so the situation ends up being more akin to a traditional RPG wherein your party is mostly predetermined than it does being like mainline Pokemon games that give you literally hundreds of options to craft a unique team of Pokemon. This is obviously a subjective hang-up. Not every Pokemon fan had this issue. Maybe their favorites were within that small pool of Pokemon. Maybe they don't have a particular favorite and are happy as long as they have a new team of Pokemon to play with. I can't speak for any of them. I can only speak for myself, and I know that my personal outlook is the result of 20 years of expectations. A lot of people see this as an inherently good thing in favor of Pokemon, but I'd argue that it's for this reason that no matter which side of this issue you may be on, Yokai Watch 3 and later 4 have something to their advantage: a clean slate. Many that have interest in checking this series out aren't predisposed to a formula, so Yokai Watch's differences can be more of a strength than a weakness, especially in the case of Yokai Watch 4. I've always seen the Yokai Watch series as if it was on an expedited Pokemon trajectory. The games are coming into their own before our very eyes, and the devs are allowed to do that because they don't have so many people breathing down their necks with conflicting messages. If you look at the gameplay found in Yokai Watch 4 so far, for example, you'll notice that it's very different from the gameplay found in Yokai Watch 1 through 3. Those battles, to me, felt more like a minigame version of Pokemon's rotation battles. Something I couldn't see myself playing for a prolonged period of time, let alone a full community adopting it on the level of a Pokemon VGC. That said, I don't think it needs to be like Pokemon to succeed, and I think Level 5 knows this, because for Yokai Watch 4, they seem to be looking at Ni no Kuni, another game they've developed, for inspiration on this entry. This, I feel, is smart on two levels, with the first of which being the existing Yokai Watch battle system lacks depth, and with that, it's hard to imagine it having the same longevity as the Pokemon battle system. This new battle system, I think, has more potential to be embraced and adopted in a competitive capacity. So much so that I even suggested that Game Freak adopt a similar system for Pokemon back in my first big Pokemon Switch video. They couldn't completely lift it, of course, because incorporating separating the trainer in a Pokemon battle would break the rules of the world. Nobody wants that. Trainers are coaches, not fighters. On the whole though, I think adding some agency to the system could be interesting, and it's for that reason that I personally gained an increased interest in Yokai Watch with the release of Yokai Watch 4. It's familiar but fresh. The second being that, well, the Yokai Watch battle system isn't exactly familiar to all of us. Ni no Kuni, on the other hand, did pretty well here, and it's existed for some time longer, being released on DS, PS3, and PS4. Adapting that is a bit of a cheat code in that sense. It allows level 5 to have some familiarity on their side, of course nowhere near the 20 years of Pokemon system, but it's a lot better than starting from most people being completely unfamiliar because they have no way of knowing if people will embrace it. Do I think that's a big enough edge for Yokai Watch to gain ground? Personally, no. But anecdotally, in that first Pokemon video that I mentioned, when I brought that idea up, a lot of people in the comments seemed to embrace the idea of having this system in Pokemon. So I think at the very least, people would be open to trying this for this system in a similar game. But ideally for level 5, they'll like it more than the turn-based version that we have with Pokemon. One area that I don't think Pokemon has a real leg to stand on though is in the story department. Even in the Digimon days, many preferred Digimon for its superior storytelling. Even from my limited exposure to Yokai Watch, I would say that remains true for this comparison. Pokemon is lacking in this department. You can't really put those games' stories in the same category as a Ni no Kuni, and therefore I think it's safe to say Yokai Watch has a really good chance of having the win in the story department. To be fair, no amount of great storytelling can account for taste. If people don't care about the world of yokai, the story won't matter to them. On paper, I would say that Yokai's biggest strength in this race is its story. Mileage may vary, and speaking of those intangible elements, trading will really only be less or more appealing to each player based on their personal taste in this area. I have yet to see a Yokai Watch design that has been able to catch my eye. Pokemon, on the other hand, there's both new and old designs that I'm in love with. Maybe part of that is the variety that becomes available when pulling from influences outside of Japan. Maybe part of that is informed by nostalgia, but even with all of that on the table, it's hard to ignore that side of the debate. Most people have attachments to the Pokemon design language. That can't be ignored. Of course, there are also the people that may prefer the more in-your-face nature of the yokai. They have more distinct personalities given the fact that they all speak, unlike Pokemon. They make jokes, they have desires, fears, and you know it. Not just from a brief blurb in their stat overview, but because they voice those things to you. I personally don't think either is necessarily a better approach. I think both handle that aspect of their characters well in their own way, but maybe you'll have a preference. The chances of Yokai Watch gaining the approval of those scorned Pokemon fans we've been talking about, I think will be made clearer when Yokai Watch 3 makes its way west come February 2019. After all, despite the fact that a Yokai Watch game made its way west in the form of Yokai Watch Blasters, these games are bad litmus tests given the fact that they are more akin to the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games than they are mainline Pokemon RPGs. That's not to say they lack the potential to win over a portion of the Pokemon fandom in the meantime. It has some of the things I feel Yokai Watch does well, like its unique charm, the Japanese cultural DNA, the self-aware modern sense of humor and references, and of course the yokai themselves. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon doesn't do as well as mainline Pokemon games, and the same is true for Yokai Watch games. I'm not even entirely sure that Yokai Watch 3 is a good case study given the fact that it'll be tethered to the 3DS as well. And yeah, sure, a lot of people bought 3DS, but that doesn't account for the people that have since lost their 3DS, broken their 3DS, retired their 3DS to focus their time on Switch, or even traded it in entirely in favor of a Switch. Of course, there's still a couple million active 3DS owners, so it's not exactly something to scoff at, but I can't say I think it'll be as good of a barometer for Yokai Watch's future in the West as the Switch version will be. I personally can't see myself jumping ship, even when considering my problems with the Pokemon franchise. There will always be a part of me that loves the world of Pokemon, that's interested in the battling, regardless of if it ends up seeing actual progression or not, and that admittedly will be painted a bit unfairly by 20 years of nostalgia. However, I do think there's room for Yokai Watch in the rotation provided it can win me over with these next few iterations in the series. Yokai Watch Blasters wasn't the game I feel I needed to become a fan of this series. I think 3 has a better chance. I think 4 has a significantly better chance. But those are my thoughts. What do you think about Yokai Watch's chances to gain ground against Pokemon on Switch? For the comment challenge, name one underdog and a subgenre that you like more than the leader in that space. For instance, I like PUBG way more than I like Fortnite. Don't judge me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd much appreciate it if you could click like and share the video with a friend who may have some interest in Yokai Watch, whether that be because they don't like Pokemon Let's Go or they just want another Pokemon-like game in their life. Check out this video's description for a link to our Discord community, links to help support the channel at no cost to you, like affiliate links, and links to our social media and all that fun stuff. For more content that you won't see here, check out our website, also linked in the description. And most importantly, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos like this being uploaded every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. New podcasts every Saturday, different channel, also in the description. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.